Carl Jung believed the most dangerous people aren't the ones who overtly scream and rage. They are, instead, the individuals who present as charming, entirely rational, and often remarkably helpful. Jung famously referred to them as shadow-possessed, but modern psychology applies a more precise term, the dark tetrad. These are people who carry 4 destructive personality traits consolidated in one lethal psychological package. Jung warned that they are experts at hiding in plain sight, wearing the trusted faces of friends, respected leaders, and intimate lovers. Most people associate toxicity with rudeness, aggression, or being difficult. Jung, however, identified a menace far more insidious. Throughout his clinical practice, he encountered patients who were not merely struggling or troubled, they were profoundly hollow. These empty vessels were animated by what he termed a constellation of evil. This constellation includes Narcissism, Machiavellianism, Psychopathy, and Sadism, 4 distinct pillars that support a single, terrifyingly cohesive personality structure. While the contemporary world labels this the dark tetrad, Jung recognized it as the architecture of human predators. These individuals deliberately avoid the appearance of monsters. That camouflage is their most powerful weapon. They look like the indispensable colleague who always has the right answer, the charismatic partner who swept you off your feet, or the family member everyone naturally confides in. Their danger stems not from their visibility, but from their calculated invisibility. By the time you recognize the reality of who they are, they have already meticulously mapped your weaknesses, tracked your behavioral patterns, and finalized their strategy for exploitation. Jung spent decades documenting these consistent patterns in his Zurich clinic. Time and again patients arrived sharing the same devastating story. Someone in their life appeared perfect on the surface, but left an emotional wasteland in their wake. Relationships crumbled, careers imploded, families fractured, and the individual at the epicenter invariably walked away clean, completely untouched, poised to initiate the cycle again. What made Jung's observations so disturbing was not just the scope of the damage, but the pattern itself, the uncanny predictability, and the systematic, almost surgical, nature of their destruction. They were not acting randomly or emotionally. They were following an internal blueprint that Jung began to meticulously chart through careful observation. The first foundational pillar Jung identified was narcissism. However, this was not mere vanity or everyday self-absorption. Jung termed it inflation, the pathological, unwavering belief that one exists on a higher plane than ordinary humans. These individuals are genuinely convinced they are chosen, exceptional, and fundamentally exempt from standard rules and consequences. Consider a composite case profile that perfectly illustrates this dynamic. Jung's clinical notes include the observation of a highly successful professional who genuinely believed he was a messiah, not figuratively, but literally. This example, synthesized from patterns Jung documented across multiple patients, depicted a man who based major life decisions on claims of divine guidance. He controlled his family through spiritual authority and manipulated associates by claiming their disagreement was an insult to heaven itself. The chilling factor was not the grandiose belief system, but his sustained, high level of functioning. He never experienced doubt or self-questioning. His inflation was so absolute that reality itself seemed to bend to accommodate his self-perception. Jung called this the God complex, a total, catastrophic disconnection from human limitation. When the ego inflates beyond personal boundaries, it merges with pure archetypal energy. The person ceases to be a fallible individual and becomes a vessel for something impersonal and inhuman. They don't just possess high self-regard, they are fundamentally incapable of comprehending that they could be wrong, flawed, or ordinary. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Every success validates their special status, and every failure must, by necessity, be someone else's fault. They constantly rewrite history, editing external reality to maintain the impeccable narrative of their own perfection. Anyone who dares challenge this narrative instantly becomes an enemy, a threat, or a problem slated for elimination. The inflated individual inhabits a private universe where they are the sun, and everyone else is merely an orbiting body. They do not experience relationships as exchanges between equals. They experience them as interactions between the divine and the mundane. You exist only to recognize their greatness, serve their vision, or remove yourself from their path. Jung observed that these individuals often rapidly ascend to positions of power because their absolute certainty is highly magnetic. People mistakenly interpret their conviction as wisdom, their inability to doubt as genuine strength, and their narcissistic inflation as authentic confidence. By the time the mask finally slips, they have already consolidated formidable control. But narcissistic inflation alone is insufficient to forge a truly dangerous personality. The inflated ego needs protection, and it needs strategy. This is where the second pillar emerges. Machiavellianism is the art of using people with ruthless efficiency, not crudely or obviously. These individuals view human relationships as intricate chess games where others are merely pieces to be moved, potentially sacrificed, and eventually discarded. They do not form genuine emotional connections, they establish strategic alliances. Jung observed patterns in patients who could map social networks with frightening, almost clinical precision. They instinctively knew who held power, who coveted power, and who could be manipulated, whether through vanity, fear, or attachment. They collected sensitive information like weaponry, archiving secrets and vulnerabilities for future strategic deployment. Jung referred to this as the overdevelopment of the persona, where the social mask becomes the entirety of the self. These individuals perfected the skill of being exactly who others required them to be, charming to power brokers, humble to those with influence, and caring to those possessing resources. But beneath this flawless mask resided an absence. No authentic self, no genuine feeling, only cold, tactical calculation. Consider a narrative illustration of this calculated pattern. Jung's observations include a composite profile of an individual who navigated multiple relationships without ever being held responsible for their dissolution. This individual studied partners like specimens, cataloging their fears, their dreams, and their core weaknesses. Then, slowly and methodically, they engineered situations that drove the partner toward behaviors that justified the Machiavellian's calculated departure. They orchestrated their own victimhood with surgical precision. The Machiavellian doesn't lose control. They create circumstances where others lose control. They avoid direct attack. They manipulate conditions until their target destroys themselves. And they accomplish all of this while appearing concerned, supportive, and even deeply loving. Jung noted that these individuals experience relationships as sustained performances. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every interaction is a transaction. They do not ask what someone needs. They calculate what someone wants and assess precisely how providing it benefits their larger strategy. Human connection becomes pure instrumentality. They remember everything you share with them, not out of care, but because information equals power. That childhood wound you shared in confidence becomes instant leverage in a future argument. The insecurity you revealed in intimacy becomes a pressure point when they require control. Your vulnerabilities are not met with compassion. They are catalogued as weaknesses. The Machiavellian's entire existence is a stage where they act simultaneously as director and lead actor. Everyone else is a supporting character whose sole purpose is advancing the plot toward the Machiavellian's desired conclusion. When you cease to be useful to that plot, you are written out entirely, without sentiment or regret. Jung realized these individuals do not betray people maliciously. They simply reorganize their social environment when previous arrangements cease to serve their immediate interests. The relationship that felt so meaningful to you was always a strategic asset to them. When assets become liabilities, they are liquidated. But even effective manipulation requires some degree of recognition of human feeling. You must understand emotion to weaponize it. The third pillar removes even that minimal limitation. Psychopathy is characterized by the complete, constitutional absence of anxiety and empathy. Jung called it the dissociation of affect, the total separation between intellectual thought and emotional feeling. These individuals can calmly discuss your deepest suffering with the same level of emotional investment they would bring to a discussion of the weather. This is not suppression of emotion. It is a genuine, organic inability to feel it. Jung's clinical observations included patterns where individuals described watching loved ones in severe distress without experiencing any internal response whatsoever. They understood intellectually that tears signified sadness. They could identify the facial expressions, the vocal patterns, and the physical signs, but they felt nothing. No internal urgency to comfort, no distress at the distress, just cold, clinical observation. This creates what Jung called the empty vessel, a human being in form only. The psychopath processes social interaction through pure, amoral logic, unburdened by the emotional feedback loop that guides normal human behavior. They learn to mimic appropriate responses, the way an actor learns lines. Sadness requires this expression. Joy requires that tone. Fear requires these behaviors. Consider a case profile illustrating this chilling dynamic. Jung documented patterns consistent with a parent figure who flawlessly performed all the required caregiving behaviors while feeling absolutely nothing internally. Not cruelty, not anger, simply absence. The child existed as an object requiring maintenance, no different than a car needing gas. Jung realized these individuals are not evil in the passionate sense. They are evil through absolute indifference. They can commit the most horrific acts without the internal moral resistance that stops normal humans. No guilt, no shame, no empathy creating a pause before harm. They calculate costs and benefits with perfect emotional neutrality. The psychopath does not hate you. That would require feeling. They simply do not register you as a fully realized human being. You are a thing in their environment, sometimes useful, sometimes neutral, sometimes an obstacle, but never a person deserving of moral consideration. Jung wrote that psychopaths are disconnected from the collective unconscious. That deep well of shared human experience, the archetypal realm that connects all people, simply does not exist for them. They walk through life psychologically alone in a way normal humans cannot comprehend. This disconnection produces a strange paradox. The psychopath often appears more logical, more rational, and more objective than normal people. They are not clouded by emotion or sentiment. They assess situations with crystal clarity. But that clarity is fundamentally inhuman. It is the clarity of a predator assessing prey, not a person engaging with another person. Normal humans make decisions influenced by how those decisions will make them and others feel. The psychopath makes decisions based purely on outcome optimization. If lying produces better results than honesty, they lie. If betrayal achieves their goal more efficiently than loyalty, they betray. Morality is not something they struggle against. It simply doesn't factor into their calculations. But the psychopath's coldness, the Machiavellian's manipulation, and the narcissist's inflation become truly monstrous when combined with the fourth pillar. Sadism is qualitatively different. The other three traits focus on obtaining goals, maintaining self-image, or navigating social systems without emotional interference. Sadism is solely about the intrinsic pleasure derived from destruction itself. This is active evil, the conscious enjoyment of causing suffering. Jung identified sadism as the rarest component of the Tetrad. Most people with dark traits are merely indifferent to causing pain, or they use it strategically. But the sadist experiences genuine euphoria when others suffer. The pain itself is the primary reward. We see this dynamic clearly in patterns Jung observed, where individuals described feeling truly alive only when witnessing the psychological collapse of others. Success at work felt empty. Achievements meant nothing. But reducing someone to tears, watching them beg, observing their complete psychological breakdown, that created a rush of meaning and power. Jung termed this the complete shadow consumption. The destructive aspects of the unconscious had not just emerged, they had taken over entirely. The conscious mind became a mere tool for feeding an unconscious darkness. Every interaction became a controlled opportunity to inflict harm while maintaining perfect deniability. The sadist does not rage. Rage is a loss of control. Instead, the sadist orchestrates highly controlled situations where they can inflict maximum psychological suffering while appearing entirely blameless. They engineer scenarios where the victim destroys themselves. Then, they watch with clinical fascination as the target crumbles. Your pain is their entertainment.
Your breakdown is their art. Jung documented how sadistic patterns involve studying victims with intense, focused concentration, learning precisely what causes the most distress, the exact words that trigger shame, the specific behaviors that create despair, then deploying these weapons methodically, always maintaining the appearance of innocence or even deep concern. This is archetypal possession by pure destructiveness. The person becomes a channel for the death drive, for entropy, for the fundamental force that seeks to unmake rather than create.
And unlike the obvious cruelty of passion, sadistic cruelty is calculated, patient, and utterly cold. The sadist doesn't want your swift death, they want your slow conscious dismantling. They want to watch you lose yourself piece by piece while being utterly unable to identify what is happening or who is responsible. They create psychological mazes, where every apparent path leads to profound pain, then observe your futile attempts to escape with clinical interest. When these four traits combine in a single individual, something genuinely terrifying emerges. Alone, each trait creates difficulty. The narcissist is exhausting, the Machiavellian is untrustworthy, the psychopath is cold, and the sadist is cruel. But together, they create what Jung called the human predator. The inflated narcissist believes they deserve to use others. The Machiavellian knows exactly how to use them. The psychopath feels zero emotional resistance to using them, and the sadist enjoys their suffering along the way. This combination does not just harm people, it annihilates them systematically while maintaining an impenetrable shield of plausible deniability. Jung wrote powerfully about archetypal possession. When someone becomes a conduit for transpersonal darkness, they cease being an individual making choices and become a force of nature, a psychological black hole consuming everything nearby. Their presence doesn't just create local problems, it fundamentally corrupts the psychological atmosphere of every space they occupy. These individuals can walk into healthy organizations and systematically watch them rot from within. They can enter functional families and orchestrate their implosion. They can form intimate relationships and methodically destroy their partner's sense of reality. And they accomplish all of this while appearing reasonable, often presenting themselves as the victim or the helpful rescuer. The dark tetrad does not announce itself. There is no flashing warning sign. That precisely is what makes it so extremely dangerous. By the time you consciously recognize what you are dealing with, they have already studied you, mapped your precise vulnerabilities, and begun executing their strategy. They will have noticed that you value loyalty, so they will test it until it breaks. They will have observed that you fear abandonment, so they will threaten it strategically. They will have seen that you desperately need validation, so they will withhold it precisely when you are most vulnerable. Every strength you possess, they will identify and weaponize. Every wound you carry, they will locate and reopen. You cannot fix these people. This is Jung's most crucial warning. When someone manifests the complete dark tetrad pattern, intervention fails. Therapy is ineffective. Love doesn't work. Understanding and compassion are useless. These are not broken people who require healing. They are predators who require prey. Jung developed a specific protocol for dealing with individuals displaying total dark tetrad possession. The goal is not transformation nor rehabilitation, but protection. The objective is not to change them. It is to survive them with your sanity intact. First, trust your intuition. Jung believed the unconscious mind recognizes danger long before the conscious mind can articulate it logically. That distinct chill you feel around certain people, that pervasive sense of wrongness, despite their outwardly perfect presentation, that is, your psyche issuing a primal warning. Listen to it. Cease rationalizing it away. Stop attempting to explain the feeling using logic. Your unconscious has detected something your consciousness has not yet fully processed. Your body knows the truth before your mind admits it, the persistent tension in your shoulders when they enter the room, the profound exhaustion after every interaction, the lingering confusion following conversations that seemed normal but felt fundamentally wrong. These are not random reactions, they are reliable warning signals sent by your deeper psyche. Second, do not engage. Jung observed that dark tetrad individuals feed ravenously on reaction. They require your emotional responses. Your anger validates them. Your hurt empowers them. Your attempts to explain or defend yourself provide them with material to twist and weaponize. The gray rock method, as modern psychology calls it, aligns perfectly with Jung's insight. Become deliberately boring and unresponsive. Give them nothing usable to work with. Show no visible emotion. Provide no unnecessary personal information. And refuse to be drawn into drama or debate. Their power is contingent upon your participation. When you become psychologically unavailable, they lose their leverage. This doesn't necessitate rudeness. It requires strategic neutrality, polite but distant, civil but securely closed. Do not explain yourself. Do not justify your boundaries. Do not engage with their calculated provocations. Responding to their attacks validates that the attacks have merit. Silence, in this context, is not weakness. It is the refusal to play a game you are guaranteed to lose. Third, withdraw. Distance is the only true protection. C.G. Jung was explicit about this fundamental truth. You cannot coexist safely with a totally possessed individual. Their presence is inherently corrupting. Their insidious influence inevitably spreads. Your only viable course of action is to establish absolute physical and psychological distance. This mandate may require drastic steps: resigning from a job, definitively ending a destructive relationship, or cutting all ties with a toxic family member. Whatever the cost, separation must be achieved. This act of self-preservation is not a sign of weakness. It is a clear-eyed recognition of reality. You are not abandoning someone who genuinely needs assistance. Instead, you are protecting yourself from a personality that feeds on chaos and destruction. Jung believed that the attempt to help an individual displaying dark tetrad traits often simply transforms the helper into another victim. Your natural compassion becomes their weapon, and your understanding becomes your greatest vulnerability. The most difficult step in withdrawal is accepting the painful realization that you cannot save them, that your love will not heal them, and your persistent patience will never transform them. They do not wish to change. They are not suffering from their destructive behavior. You are. And they are either completely indifferent to that suffering, or, worse, actively enjoying it. Jung's final insight was profoundly philosophical. Understanding darkness does not necessitate engaging with it. It means protecting your own light. You study dangerous psychological phenomena, not to befriend them, but solely to recognize and avoid them. As Jung stated, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The dark tetrad exists. Denying that reality does not make you compassionate. It makes you utterly vulnerable. These specific patterns move through the world, causing systematic harm. Recognizing them is not judgment, it is wisdom. Protecting yourself from them is not cruel, it is necessary. Your psychological health depends entirely on your ability to accurately identify people who cannot and will not change, who perceive your basic humanity as a weakness to be exploited, and who experience your suffering as a source of pleasure. They are real. Jung documented these behavioral patterns extensively, and modern psychology confirms his observations. Your critical task is not to save them, it is to save yourself. If you have encountered someone displaying these characteristics, you know exactly what this description entails. The charm that always felt slightly off, the display of concern that somehow left you feeling worse than before, the help that created far more problems than it solved, and the relationship that ultimately left you questioning your own sanity. Trust that experience. It was real. That was the dark tetrad revealing its true self. Comment below if you have recognized these destructive patterns and share your experience. Sometimes, validation from others who truly understand makes the crucial difference between doubting yourself and trusting your own perceptions. Subscribe for more deep psychological insights. And remember, protecting yourself from the darkness is not the same as refusing to acknowledge that it exists.